So you have a 2-year green card, which means you must file the I-751 petition to remove conditions on residence in order to keep your green card. And you probably know that the most ideal way to do this would be to do a joint filing, meaning you and your spouse are signing this and filing this together to show immigration that you are still married and having a life together just as you had intended. But what if you cannot do a joint filing? Well, all is not lost. U.S. immigration actually has several grounds for a waiver to this joint filing requirement, meaning you may be able to file just by yourself, and if you're approved, get to still keep your green card and live in the United States. So in this video, I'll do a broad overview of all the grounds for waiver. Hi, I'm SohYoon Atac. I'm an attorney and one of the founders of Adam Law Group. We plan to release weekly videos about the law, starting with immigration. And if this is of interest to you, or if you want to know more about how the law can serve you, please subscribe. I'll cover 6 grounds for waiver to the I-751 joint filing requirement, 3 of which are related, as you'll see. And at the end, I'll do a couple tips, including one about timing. You should know that you're not limited to picking just one ground for your waiver. You can actually assert multiple grounds on your single I-751 waiver filing, so it really should be a strategic decision. So the first ground of waiver as to why you cannot do a joint filing with your spouse is that, sadly, your spouse has died. In this case, the death certificate is a key document. Please make sure that your name is clearly stated as the surviving spouse on the death certificate. That's really important. You should still provide evidence of a bona fide relationship, but technically for this ground, that burden is much less compared to all the other grounds for a waiver. The second ground is that you married in good faith, but unfortunately, like many marriages, it just didn't work out and your marriage is ended. If this is the case, it's really important that you have a finalized, which means completed, termination of your marriage. So a final divorce decree or an annulment. Because of some procedural issues, you cannot actually request this ground until your marriage is legally fully terminated. Now, for this ground, it is so important. You must have really, really strong evidence of the bona fide relationship, meaning a genuine, real relationship. Because when immigration sees, a couple that live together, for a very short time, or as soon as your conditional residence was approved, you start living apart, then certainly that brings up more red flags. So here you want to have as much evidence as possible, and we'll do a separate video because it's an issue that will take a bit of time to discuss that further. A third possible waiver ground is that you married in good faith, but then during your marriage, you were subjected to battery or extreme cruelty by your U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident spouse. According to the Code of Federal Regulations, this includes, but is not limited to, being the victim of any act or threatened act of violence, including any forceful detention which results or threatens to result in physical or mental injury. This also includes psychological abuse, sexual abuse or exploitation. And here, of course, it's really important, as painful as it may be, to have as much documentary evidence as possible. The evidence can include things like police reports, medical records, orders of protection, or if you have a divorce decree where the ground for divorce is abuse, physical abuse or extreme cruelty, that should definitely be included. For this ground also, you still must establish that this marriage is a real, genuine, bona fide relationship. So you still must submit that evidence in addition to all the evidence documenting the abuse. The fourth ground is related to the previous ground, but this applies to a conditional resident child. So the ground is that your parents enter the marriage in good faith, and then during the marriage you were battered or subjected to cruelty by, and this is by either your conditional resident parent or your U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident step-parent. A fifth possible ground for a waiver is that you, the conditional resident, were in a bigamous relationship. A sixth ground for a waiver that's possible is that you can show that the termination of your status, so your case is denied and you being removed or deported from the United States, would result in extreme hardship. And the extreme hardship period that we're talking about here is your 2-year conditional resident period. And the hardship that you have to show has to be significantly more than what the typical person would face if they're deported after having lived in the US for an extended period of time. A couple tips. As I mentioned at the beginning, you're not limited to having just one ground of waiver if you qualify for more than one. But we generally recommend that where your marriage is terminated through divorce or annulment, that you definitely include the waiver ground of we entered the marriage in good faith, but it was terminated through, divorce or annulment, that you definitely include that even if you're going to do something else like abuse or extreme cruelty. A second tip I want to give is about timing. So, if you're qualified for one of these grounds for a waiver, then I imagine you're going through or have gone through some challenging times. So this is one piece of good news in that challenging time, and that's that very strict 90-day filing window that you must file the I-751 in the 90-day period before your 2-year green card expires. That actually does not apply. So you can file anytime while you're a conditional resident until you are removed from the United States, especially if you're going through challenging times. I hope this video gives you some insight and some hope, at least with regards to your US immigration status. If you found this helpful, please like the video and subscribe. I wish you the best and have a wonderful rest of your day.